All right, I will call this special meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. We have just one item on our docket, and that is the memorandum agreement on the City of Oklahoma City to set forth terms and the conditions of the Continental Resources and Bank First Corporation to purchase the Santa Fe parking garage. Most of the trustees have been updated because of a parking committee meeting, but I'll let Jason kind of give us an overview of what the memorandum is, and then if there's any questions, we can discuss it.
Sure. So for an overview of the item, we have a memorandum of agreement for consideration by the Board of Trustees setting forth the terms and conditions for Continental Resources and Bank First Corporation to purchase Santa Fe parking garage for the appraised value of $22.5 million. And as mentioned, we've discussed this in the parking committee meeting, but just a quick recap of kind of what's got us here is, you'll recall back in basically August of 2017 when the Board of Trustees received an unsolicited offer to purchase the Santa Fe parking garage from Continental Resources. We looked at that offer, did a subsequent appraisal, and as we discussed with the committee and working through that process, one of our biggest concerns was if we were to sell that entire garage, what would happen with individuals using that garage to park that worked at Cotpa Tower. So we looked at some different options on possibly turning the garage into a unit ownership estate, which would allow for a condominium situation, or perhaps selling a portion of that garage to Continental Resources. Well, as we now know, Bank First is made a proposal to purchase the Cotpa Tower. They, like Continental Resources, want permanency in parking for their tenants. And so they too are interested in purchasing parking in the Santa Fe parking garage. So the MOA basically is sets forth the terms for, as I mentioned, Continental and Bank First to purchase the garage, or a soon-to-be formed limited liability comprised of those two. So that's really where we're at with the MOA. And then just as we discussed some of the due diligence we did on our part as staff, and I know the committee looked at this too, is with the sale of the garage, we did concern ourselves, of course, with our existing tenants, both tenants in the retail space as well as our existing parkers. The Skirvin, of course, was a main consideration, and pleased to report and let you know that within the MOA, the proposed purchasers have agreed to assume all of our existing leases, including the Skirvin arrangement. In addition to that, we did look at, well, what's going to happen with parkers that are not affiliated with Bank First or Continental. How do we handle that? How do we make sure that they still have parking? And keep in mind, with the relocation of parkers, Continental parkers from Cox Center to the Santa Fe, we're confident we have ample parking spaces in the Cox Center for anybody that may be displaced from the Santa Fe. So I think the message there is, if you're currently a Cotpa parking customer, we have a place for you to park. Nobody's going to be displaced and not have a place to park. And then we looked at the transaction in terms of where it put Cotpa financially, and I know we spent some time in the committee meeting going through that, but we are confident this also puts us in a better position financially, especially in terms of debt coverage ratio. And then again, with this transaction, it really supports the permanency of two large downtown employers in Continental and Bank First. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any additional questions on the MOA.
Thanks. A comment, then a question. One, I'm very, very excited that Bank First is stepping forward to purchase Liberty Bank, Cotpa Tower. This is like super important to me, as somebody who loves history. So that's one thing. So I'm very excited that they're going to be there and they're going to be able to retain their employees downtown, and that we need that parking. My question comes down to the appraisal something I was looking forward to seeing was that the amount that would be out there would be a market cost, but also something that took in consideration its value to us as a public entity, as a public asset rather. Is that part of this, or is this just straight up, this is what this would cost at the market level, not including, you know, how much we as a city would get from this?
Yeah, so the appraised value of $22.5 million is basically a market appraisal using an income approach based off the cash flows the garage generates. Now, the appraisal that we had done did look at what we would consider to be an investment value, which is kind of, it's what it's worth to a public entity such as Cotpa that does not pay property taxes, but of course, in the private sector, evaluation such as the one we have pretty much have to contemplate property taxes because that impacts the cash flow. Also, to your point, the $22.5 million that is in the appraisal does assume that the University of Central Oklahoma basically takes possession of all of the vacant tenant space that we currently have at the Santa Fe parking garage. As you know, we've been working through that project with them to refurbish that space and lease all that space. So, so those are really the factors that drive the $22.5 million. Yeah.
They wouldn't own it.
Yes, correct. Will the city have any continued involvement with the UCO, the small business incubator? I mean, after we sell the garage, it seems like we wouldn't, and that to me seems like a very vital entity to be there, because I think we need to be encouraging small businesses and helping them, you know, to fulfill whatever their visions are for their business. And I'd like to see more of those small businesses downtown as we create a more walkable downtown. So I'm curious, do we have any say with them going forward?
They're contracting the space from us, but we're very interested in seeing their success. We agree that it's an important part of the future of downtown is to have more small businesses, and we're hopeful that this will assist us in that goal.
Good.
In addition to that, as you'll recall, the letter of intent that we have with UCO contemplates at least a 10-year lease, and then that lease will be moving forward to the Cotpa board, which then the proposed purchasers would assume. So there's some longevity to that in itself there.
All right. Any other questions? Well, I think it's a wonderful arrangement to maintain this relationship with two of our biggest downtown employers, and something that we certainly need to do. So at this time, I'll have a motion to approve the memorandum.
I'll make that motion to also to ratify what the parking committee just recommended, to recommend the adoption of the memorandum of agreement or approval.
I was just going to say, while I'm very excited that this is happening, personally, I'd like to have seen it have that, in the appraisal cost, I would have wanted to see the value that it is to us as a city asset as well. So for me, while I'm glad this goes there, I'd actually like to see it go even further. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So I'm kind of curious about that.
We understand that, and that's why we had the appraisal written up in the two ways that we did. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is that when we sold the other garages, we sold them for fair market value, and so there's some precedent that it's out there. Sure. And it's hard for the private sector that does have the higher cost of borrowing and that does have to pay property taxes, which those are the two factors in coming up with the higher investment price, don't have those advantages. So it's not that value to them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we have to take a look at the other things. That's to maintain our second largest employer downtown and putting something in that will ensure the long-term success of the Cotter Tower, and ultimately, although the COP is not involved with this, but having another parking garage, a second garage, being anticipated for the Bricktown area brings more parking to the downtown area and is good for all of downtown. So we do achieve some other goals and yet maintain the assessed value, the market value, assessed value. And by the way, at the end of the day, Cotpa is in just as good a shape, if maybe not a little bit better shape, actually in the ability to build the convention center garage because of the cash that we bring to the table and have less debt that needs to be issued for that, significantly less debt that has to be issued for that parking facility.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'd second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to oppose it, actually.
You what?
I'd like to say I oppose it.
Okay.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman? I just want to really thank the Cotpa team that was involved in putting this together. Jason was really stepped up with the assistance of Craig Freeman and Kenny Sudel, and Corey was involved in some of the meetings to get this put together. It was a really, Wiley, oh my gosh, Wiley Williams was very much involved. But that was the team that put that together, and it was very satisfying for me to watch how well that team worked together so efficiently and professionally to bring this to a conclusion.
Well, I've always said that of the city trusts, and of course I'm not associated with all of them, but I think the Cotpa Trust is well deserving of any accolades they get, because I think they're sincere, dedicated to the betterment of the city, and I appreciate all the work that they've all done in the staff. So, all right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.